Hey guys, tonight we're climbing a winding marble staircase that doesn't quite exist, up past the clouds and into the still, perfumed air of Mount Olympus. There, somewhere between nectar goblets and long-winded harp solos, lies something even gods can't resist, a nap. You can see it now, Apollo stretched on a golden chaise, Hera lounging with cucumber slices on her eyelids, and Zeus snoring into a lion fur pillow. This isn't some grand battle scene. This is divine nap time, and it's not optional. And no, you probably won't survive this, not because of any ancient curse, but because the moment your head imagines resting on one of those cloud pillows, you're going to drift right off. It's weaponized boredom, wrapped in myth. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And tell me, where are you listening from, and what time is it there? I love knowing who's dozing off where. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You begin your stroll at the edge of Olympus, where the air always smells faintly of blooming laurel and toasted honey cakes. The gods don't build bedrooms the way mortals do. No stone, no doors. Just pavilions of silk, lined with cushions so soft you'd mistake them for warm fog. Zeus prefers an open canopy, something breezy with eagle motifs. Hera's room is private, curtained, and mysteriously always has the exact number of candles you need. Poseidon's, oddly enough, includes a waterbed that might actually be a jellyfish. And Aphrodite? Her whole setup seems designed to cause drowsiness in a 10-foot radius. Rose petals. Harp music. Ambient sighing. Historians still argue whether these descriptions come from allegorical poetry or were exaggerated by later Roman retellings. Either way, the Greeks gave sleep to their gods not as weakness, but as indulgent, almost strategic luxury. You shuffle past Dionysus, who's drooling on a half-eaten fig, wine staining his robe. He mutters something in his sleep, probably a toast. Hermes is napping midair, face down on a scroll. Artemis rests under a silver net of stars, bow propped nearby, even her dreams carefully aimed. It's not just decor. Sleep on Olympus is considered sacred, necessary, and deeply political. You notice Hypnos isn't among them, not yet. But we'll get to him. The quirky bit? In some myths, gods are said to dream just like mortals, even though they're technically all-seeing. Which raises the strange possibility that Zeus might have invented entire storms based on a weird dream involving goats and betrayal. You settle onto an empty couch. Don't worry, it's probably not cursed. The cushions rise to greet you, like gentle waves. A breeze threads through the pavilion, and you hear something like a lullaby hummed in a language you can't quite remember. Every part of Olympus encourages sleep. Not because there's nothing to do, but because sleep is power. Rest well, and you wake sharp. Rest poorly, and you make terrible decisions, like turning into a swan. You begin to realize, the gods don't just nap for comfort. They nap with purpose. They use rest as armor. As disguise. And soon, when war breaks out, they'll use it as a weapon. But for now, the air is warm, the sky is sleepy lavender, and your eyes? Already a little heavy. Careful, though. You haven't even met Hypnos yet. You descend from Olympus now, not in a dramatic bolt of lightning or with a winged chariot, but with the gentlest drift, like a falling petal. Downward you float, through mist and starlight, until you arrive at the edge of a dark cave hidden far beyond the lands of men. No mortals come here willingly, and even gods tread softly. This is the home of Hypnos, god of sleep. And it's quieter than silence. The entrance is veiled in poppies and vines, and the air is so still it feels like time paused just outside. You step inside and everything changes. Your heartbeat slows. The hairs on your arm flatten. Even your thoughts begin to tiptoe. Inside, there is no fire. No harsh stone. Just velvet dark, soft moss, and flowers that don't bloom so much as sigh. The ceiling glows faintly, like moonlight trapped in cobwebs. And in the center, reclining on a black couch woven from dreams and forgetfulness, is Hypnos himself. He doesn't speak. He doesn't need to. Just being near him is enough to make your limbs go limp with comfort. He has wings, you notice, small ones, tucked behind each ear, constantly fluttering as if stirring dreams into the air. That's how he travels, slipping through minds while they sleep, whispering forgetfulness into weary brows. Hypnos is no trickster. No warrior. But make no mistake, he's powerful. Because every mortal, every god, even time itself eventually must close its eyes. Historians still argue whether Hypnos was always considered a benevolent figure. Some myths paint him as a gentle guardian of sleep, others suggest he used his powers mischievously, causing inconvenient naps, missed omens, and even diplomatic disasters at inopportune moments. One theory even claims he once lulled an entire fleet into unconsciousness because they sang off-key. The quirky bit? Hypnos is said to live beside the river Lethe, the river of forgetfulness. Not because he's forgetful, but because dreams and forgetting go hand in hand. You must forget the world a little, after all, in order to sleep. You wander through the cave, your fingers brushing the petals of night-blooming flowers that release drowsy scents. There's a deer asleep mid-step, eyes half-closed in bliss. A lion curled like a kitten beside a bubbling spring. Even the air naps here. Hypnos gestures once, and the room dims further. He doesn't smile, but his presence is kind. He remembers every dream you've ever had, and some you haven't had yet. He stores them like scrolls, folded neatly into clouds. You sit beside him. He leans forward, blowing a kiss of drowsiness toward the world above. Somewhere, a king dozes in mid-conquest. A sailor slumps over his oar. A mighty general forgets his speech and simply curls up on the temple floor. You realize, in that moment, why gods fear Hypnos. Because unlike most divine powers, fire, storms, war, sleep comes quietly. It does not announce itself. It does not need permission. It simply arrives, gentle and unstoppable. Even Zeus himself once tried to command Hypnos. The result? Well, let's just say even the king of Olympus had to take a nap now and then. We'll get to that. But for now, you rest in this silent cave where dreams are stitched together by the god who never rushes, never raises his voice, and always wins in the end. You yawn. Hypnos raises an eyebrow. Careful, you're still needed in the world of the waking. But one more moment here, just one, won't hurt. You drift upward now, gently leaving the cave of Hypnos, still wrapped in a light mist of dreams. You surface somewhere entirely different, on the hazy edge of a battlefield. Dust hangs in the air. Shields glint. Bronze clatters softly in the distance. But no one is moving, not yet. This is the Trojan War, the great drama where gods meddled in the affairs of mortals like children playing with painted figurines. Only now, instead of thunderbolts and divine rage, the gods are deploying something far more subtle. Something that floats under armor and curls behind the eyes. Sleep. You stand among the Greek ranks as they prepare to charge. Helms are fastened, swords drawn. But something's off. There's a haze behind their eyes, like morning fog that hasn't quite burned away. A weariness, not from battle, but from dreams they didn't choose. It begins with Hera. She's annoyed, as usual. This time, her frustration isn't with a mortal, but with Zeus himself. He's interfering again, sending winds to aid the Trojans, giving pep talks in the form of divine visions. So she does what any annoyed immortal would do. She decides to put Zeus to sleep. Historians still argue whether this story is symbolic, an allegory for the failure of power, or whether it reflects a very literal belief that even the king of gods could be vulnerable to fatigue. Some sources say it was a metaphor. Others insist Hera just really wanted 5 minutes of control without her husband meddling. But before she can act, she needs help. Which brings us back to Hypnos. The quirky part. Hera bribes Hypnos with something unexpected, not gold, not honor, but a wife. She offers him Pasithea, goddess of relaxation and hallucination. And Hypnos, gentle though he may be, is not immune to divine matchmaking. So he agrees. You follow them as they ascend Mount Ida, near Troy, where Zeus is watching the battle unfold below. Hera approaches, all charm and false innocence. She distracts him with flattery, with soft words, with, let's say, affectionate diversion. And as he leans back, drowsy and pleased, Hypnos emerges from behind a cloud. He touches Zeus's forehead. The king of gods slumps. Eyes closed. Mouth slightly open. The birds fall silent. He's out cold. And suddenly, the battlefield below changes. You can almost hear the breeze shift. The Greeks surge forward, emboldened. Hera sends her favored warriors into the fray. Trojans stumble, disoriented. No one quite knows what's happened, only that fortune has tilted while the sky naps. It's not a thunderbolt that alters fate today. It's a yawn. And you watch from the sidelines, marveling that all it took to silence the stormmaker was a soft breath and a well-timed favor. Sleep isn't just rest in these myths. It's sabotage. A divine delay. A weapon of whispers. The Greeks gain ground. The balance sways. Eventually, Zeus wakes. Confused. Displeased. But the damage is done. The war has shifted. And you realize now, perhaps for the first time, that sleep in Greek mythology wasn't just a nightly ritual, it was strategy. One nap at the right moment could change history. You linger on Mount Ida a little longer, where Zeus, fresh from his unscheduled nap, blinks into the sunlight like a confused bear coming out of hibernation. His brow furrows. His nostrils flare. Somewhere in the distance, the battle sounds have changed, just enough for him to realize that something's off. You know that moment when you wake up from a deep sleep and immediately suspect someone's been up to something? That's Zeus now. Only instead of a missing remote, it's a redirection of an entire war. And he's not pleased. The great irony. This wasn't the first time Hypnos lulled Zeus to sleep. It was the second. The first time. Well, let's just say Hypnos almost ended up scattered across the sky like flower petals in a thunderstorm. You follow Hypnos now as he glides quickly away, very quickly, in fact. After all, nobody wants to be around when the king of Olympus realizes he's been duped again. Hypnos hides in the ocean, near his mother Nyx's domain, because even Zeus doesn't mess with primordial night. Historians still argue whether this version of events reflects a deeper theme in Greek mythology, that even the most powerful god can't resist sleep. Some interpret this as a moral lesson: all kings, all tyrants, even all thunder-wielding deities are humbled by rest. Others think it's just Hera being Hera, weaponizing every soft thing in her divine arsenal. The quirky bit? After Zeus's first nap, way back when Hera tricked him during the Trojan War's earlier phase, he swore vengeance on Hypnos. Hypnos only escaped by flying straight to Nyx, who simply raised an eyebrow and folded the darkness around him like a shawl. Zeus, for all his fire and bluster, backed down without a word. Apparently, even supreme gods respect bedtime if mom enforces it. But what really sticks with you is how casual the gods are about using sleep as a pressure point. You recall other moments: Achilles, not fighting because he's resting in his tent, the fate of nations hinging on one man's sulk in his cot. Or Menelaus nearly dying on the battlefield until a divine nap slows time just long enough for him to be rescued. You walk now among the Greek camp. The smell of sweat and sea salt clings to the canvas tents. Warriors lie dozing, heads on shields, dreaming of wives, home, or, more often, just silence. And above them, the gods hover, occasionally pressing a finger to someone's temple or breathing a quick gust of sleep into a stubborn general's ear. They're not subtle. But they don't need to be. You peer into a tent where a young soldier sleeps. His fingers twitch, his lips murmur words to a dream only he sees. What if that dream was planted? What if Hypnos dropped in to leave a tiny seed of hesitation? Or courage? Or surrender? Sleep isn't just rest in these myths. It's a delivery system. An injection of divine will under the cover of soft snores. You realize now that the gods' favorite time to strike isn't when mortals are armed, but when they're vulnerable. Open. Unaware. And so, in a war famous for fire and steel, for ships and sieges, it's sleep that does some of the most efficient work. All it takes is a moment. A yawn. A drooping eyelid. And suddenly, the fate of Troy slips a few degrees closer to the end. You wake slowly this time, not from Hypnos's cave or a god-induced trance, but from a mid-battle nap you didn't know you were taking. Dust still clings to your tunic, your shield rests against your knee, and the sound of shouting is far too distant for how close the front lines were just moments ago. Welcome to the strange reality of battlefield siestas. You're not the only one. Around you, warriors lie in awkward heaps, some slumped against carts, others snoring beneath overturned helmets. Their swords are still sheathed. Their horses snooze on their feet, twitching as if galloping through dreams. No one is dead. They're just, deeply, unreasonably asleep. This isn't laziness. This is divine interference. Hypnos has been busy again. Sometimes, he works with Hera. Sometimes Athena. Occasionally, even Ares, though he prefers yelling to whispering. But in any case, when the gods want to pause the action without explaining themselves, they use the easiest tool in the box, sleep. It's almost elegant, really. No fire. No screaming. Just a well-placed yawn, and a whole flank of soldiers forgets to charge. Historians still argue whether these mass slumbers in myth were meant to represent real battlefield fatigue or symbolic divine influence. Some scholars suggest they reflect actual wartime moments, when exhaustion struck so deeply it felt like the gods themselves had pulled the strings. Others point out that using sleep as a storytelling device allowed poets to skip messy logistics, no need to describe military formations when everyone's unconscious. The quirky bit? There's one obscure myth where two armies supposedly fell asleep facing each other for an entire afternoon. When they woke, they were so embarrassed by the nap-off that they declared a temporary truce. Imagine explaining that in the war scrolls. You move quietly among the bodies. A spear rolls from a sleeping soldier's hand. His lips move in dream argument. You swear he's asking someone to pass the olives. Nearby, a captain snores like a goat, face buried in his cloak. You recognize him, famous for yelling speeches before battle. Now, he murmurs a lullaby to himself. Hypnos works fast. And here's the thing, no one remembers these naps. Once they wake, the soldiers assume they fainted from the heat. Or they claim the battle never happened at all. A god might erase the memory entirely, leaving only sore legs and the eerie sense that time passed too quickly. You duck under an olive tree where two archers are slumped, arms still draped across their quivers. An arrow pokes out from one sandal, but he doesn't notice. His breath rises and falls like gentle surf. You sit with them a moment. Just to rest. Just to listen. A breeze curls through the field. Soft. Cool. Kind. This, you think, is the real power of gods, not in thunder or wrath, but in the ability to halt an army with the gentlest touch. A single breath that says, not yet. Sleep. And the war, ever obedient to Olympus, obeys. You step lightly now, deeper into the realm of dreams, not your own, but the ones borrowed, planted, or stolen by the gods. Around you, the air pulses strangely, like someone humming a lullaby underwater. Welcome to the not-so-peaceful world of divine espionage, conducted entirely through dreams. Imagine it, a sleeping king, mouth slightly open, surrounded by anxious servants. His brows twitch. His fingers curl. He mumbles something about a white stallion and a burning ship. When he wakes, he declares war. That's not random. That's divine programming. You float into one such dream now, slipping in like a shadow beneath the eyelids of Agamemnon, the very mortal leading the Greeks at Troy. Tonight, he dreams of victory. A mysterious figure appears in his sleep, radiant and confident. The figure tells him that now is the time. Troy will fall by morning. All he has to do is attack. Immediately. Agamemnon wakes, sits up, and declares the moment ripe. The funny part? That glowing dream figure was sent by Zeus. And Zeus was lying. Troy was not going to fall. But the attack would serve his purposes. Dreams, in Greek myth, weren't random. They were couriers, custom-built for persuasion. You didn't dream about flying fish because your brain had a weird day. You dreamed it because a god, or perhaps a god's assistant, planted it like a seed, and now it's blooming into action. Historians still argue whether the Greeks truly believed dreams were literal divine messages or if poets used them as literary shortcuts, convenient moments to drop exposition or turn the plot. Some evidence suggests that temples kept dream interpreters on hand like we keep phone chargers, essential, mysterious, and mostly misused. The quirky bit? The Greeks had names for different kinds of dreams. Oneiroi were shadowy spirits, children of Nyx, who carried dreams through twin gates, one of horn, truth, and one of ivory, lies. Imagine having to guess whether your dream came through the honest door or the decorative one. You now follow one of these Oneiroi, a figure made of smoke and fabric, slipping into the dreams of a Trojan commander. The Oneiro's whispers of betrayal plants a vision of Greek ships catching fire. The commander wakes, panicked, and reorganizes his troops away from the shoreline. Exactly what the gods wanted. You move from dream to dream like a soft breeze through a field of candles. A soldier dreams of returning home, so he fights harder. A scout dreams of failure, so he hesitates. A king dreams of victory, so he forgets to plan. It's all manipulated. Lovingly. Strategically. You might think it unfair. And maybe it is. But the gods don't see dreams as private. They see them as opportunity. Why shout from a mountain when you can whisper in someone's ear while they snore? You pause beside a young archer. He's dreaming of wings. Of floating above the battlefield. It's a harmless dream. No orders. No lies. Just a gift. Because even the gods, now and then, allow a moment of peace. But only for a moment. You blink, and the dream smoke clears. You're back on the dusty plains of Troy, but something's still. Not silent, there's always wind, always the creak of shields and distant murmurs, but still in a way that feels unnatural. The kind of stillness that makes birds hesitate in flight. Hector's men, once so fierce and focused, are asleep. Not just resting, fully sprawled across the grass, mouths open, armor askew, dreams thick as fog in the air. You step between bodies that should be watchful, alert. Instead, a spear leans forgotten against a cart, and the fire meant for night patrols burns low and unattended. This wasn't sabotage. This was sleep. Too deep. Too easy. It's not clear who did it this time. Maybe Hypnos, again. Maybe Morpheus, slipping shapes into heads like a sleepy sculptor. Or maybe Hera, pushing for one final edge. Either way, the Trojans nap as the Greeks gather on the far edge of the field, quiet, boots muffled in the dust, ready to strike. You hover over Hector himself, lying beside his shield, a lion asleep under a fig tree. His brow is calm, his breath steady. You know how tired he's been. How long he's fought. And now, just when he should be most alert, the gods have pressed a pillow into his chest. Historians still argue whether this mythical sleep was divine mercy or brutal manipulation. Was Hector given rest to honor his humanity, or to make his downfall cleaner, quieter, more poetic. Some poets suggest he dreamed of his son, safe, laughing. Others say he dreamed of the sea, rising fast over Troy's burning rooftops. The quirky bit? In a lesser-known retelling, a single soldier in Hector's unit stayed awake, not because he resisted the gods, but because he'd drunk too much honey wine and couldn't sleep. His half-drunken panic saved a dozen men. And yet, no one remembers his name. You hear it now, the crunch of Greek boots moving in unison, a tide of men drawing closer to this slumbering city. The attack is swift. And terrible. The Trojans scramble from sleep, rubbing eyes, fumbling sandals. It's too late. By the time the gods pull back their influence, the damage is done. Fortifications cracked. Lines broken. Dreams replaced by the harsh light of fire. Hector, heroic and noble, rallies his men. But the sleep has done its job. The delay, the haze, the subtle wobble in decisions, it all adds up. You watch him ride out, knowing what's to come. The gods have already seen the ending. This nap wasn't rest. It was rehearsal for tragedy. And as the fires crackle and the city gasps, you feel it again, that strange chill, knowing the greatest blows sometimes come not from the sword, but from the softness before it. Sleep, weaponized once more. You drift now along the wind-blown coast, away from Troy, following the creaking hulls of Greek ships as they finally set sail. The war has ended, or at least paused, and the victors are heading home. But home, it turns out, is harder to reach when sleep still lingers like sea mist in the folds of their minds. You board one of these ships, where a man sits at the stern with a tired scowl and salt in his beard. Odysseus. Cunning, clever, and utterly exhausted. He's been through war, and now he's about to discover that sleep can cost you years. You settle next to him as the crew rows steadily. The wind favors them, gifted by the gods. Their sails snap crisply. Spirits are high. And then, it happens. Odysseus dozes off. Just for a moment. A deserved nap. He's earned it, after all. But while he sleeps, his men grow curious. There's a bag on board, tied, sealed, and humming softly with contained air. A gift from Aeolus, the wind god. Inside, every wind but the one they need. Treasure, one crewman whispers. Gold, another agrees. They open it. And just like that, chaos. Winds explode across the deck. The ship spins. The coastline that once seemed so close disappears over the horizon, sucked into a swirl of divine weather. Odysseus wakes to the groan of ropes and the screams of his men. But it's too late. Sleep, once again, has undone him. Historians still argue whether this episode was meant to symbolize hubris, betrayal, or just bad timing. Was it Odysseus's fault for resting, or his crew's for acting while he did? Some say the gods wanted him delayed. Others claim sleep was just a plot device, a polite way to undo progress without another war. The quirky bit? There's a theory that Aeolus's bag of winds was originally a metaphor for a dream, tied tightly, too powerful to open safely. Once loosed, it brings confusion, distance, and a complete loss of direction. You float now beside the ship, tossed again across the sea. Days blur. Islands pass. One with giants. One with goats. One with too many sheep. And all along the way, Odysseus keeps trying to resist sleep. But it creeps in, always. On Circe's island, it arrives in the form of warm food and soft cushions. The men fall quickly, turn to pigs, yes, but also into snoring, content beasts. With Calypso, sleep is even sneakier. It comes with affection, with calm sunsets and vines heavy with fruit. Days slide into years, years into fog. Odysseus dreams of Ithaca, but the dreams keep him still. He forgets his mission for long stretches. Even his mind, once razor-sharp, is dulled by the softness of enchanted rest. You watch as he lies on the beach, his gaze toward the sea, unsure if he's trapped or simply tired. This isn't just a man delayed by gods. This is a man delayed by comfort, by dreams, by sleep's strange lure. And only when the gods grow bored, and Hermes is sent to nudge him awake, does the journey resume. You understand now. Sleep isn't just a break in these myths. It's an obstacle. A detour. Sometimes earned. Sometimes inflicted. But always, always powerful. You step ashore on a new island, warm, sweet-smelling, and quiet in a way that makes your eyelids flutter. The grass here hums with enchantment, and the breeze carries music too soft to be played by mortal hands. This is where sleep doesn't strike like lightning or sneak like a whisper. Here, it seduces. You're on the island of Circe first. The enchantress stands barefoot in a gown of shifting colors, stirring a pot that smells like herbs, honey, and dreams. Her voice is low, melodic. Her words wrap around you like vines. And when she invites you to sit, to sip, to rest, you do. Not because you're tricked. Because you want to. That's her true magic. Not the transformation of men into animals. Not the illusions. But the soft collapse of resistance. The kind of sleep that feels earned, but never ends. Odysseus's crew lounges nearby, content as pigs in the sun. Literally. They've been transformed, some snore loudly, others twitch their hooves in dreams. But they don't fight it. They don't want to. Why would they? The grass is soft. The world is kind. And your muscles melt. Historians still argue whether Circe was meant to be a villain or a warning. Some claim her island represents indulgence, rest turned toxic. Others argue she was misunderstood, a woman who offered safety and healing to those who came broken from war. The quirky bit? In some lesser-known versions of the myth, the transformation into animals wasn't punishment. It was therapy. Circe believed humans carried too much pain and let them become beasts to truly rest. You're not sure whether that's cruel or compassionate. Eventually, with help from Hermes, Odysseus resists. He draws his sword. Not to fight her, but to prove he won't surrender. Circe relents. They talk. They share meals. They become companions. But still, she offers rest. Again and again. Months pass in the space of sighs. Then comes Calypso. You barely notice the transition. One island drifts into the next like a dream-shifting location. Calypso's realm is even softer. Less herbs and illusions. More longing. She sings as she weaves, her voice like moonlight in fabric. Here, Odysseus is loved. Genuinely. Calypso offers him immortality, endless peace, a life of sun-warmed sleep by her side. And for 7 years, he accepts. You stand beside him on the shore one morning, the waves lapping gently at his ankles. His face is lined now. Not from pain. From rest. From days too similar. From sleep too deep. He stares at the horizon. It's not that he hates Calypso. Or the island. Or even the peace. It's that he remembers. And memory, unlike sleep, stings. He wants to go home. Historians still debate whether Calypso represents love, temptation, or stasis. Was she a blessing delayed, or an obstacle dressed in comfort? Some say she's the god's way of testing resolve. Others say she's the dream none of us really want to wake from. The quirky bit? Her name, Calypso, means to conceal. It wasn't just her island that hid Odysseus, it was the sleep of forgetting, the illusion of arrival. You watch him build the raft. His hands are calloused again. His gaze focused. Sleep had nearly won. But not quite. He sails. And you drift after him, carrying the scent of Circe's herbs and Calypso's lullabies. Because even now, the gods are not done using rest as a trap. You drift again, this time not toward an island or battlefield, but into a tent at the edge of a quiet camp. The fire outside flickers low. The guards are posted. All seems ordinary. But inside, a warrior lies motionless, his brow relaxed, his sword just within reach. And beside him, though you almost miss her, stands Athena. She leans low, not in person but in presence. Her voice doesn't echo. It settles, into the folds of his mind like a feather dropped into still water. Tonight, she isn't armored. No shield. No flashing eyes. Just soft light and a single whispered sentence. Because tonight, Athena is using sleep not to silence, but to speak. This is a different kind of intervention. Not knocking someone unconscious like Zeus after wine. Not wrapping someone in vines of forgetfulness like Circe. No, this is calculated. Precision-guided dreaming. Goddess-grade pep talk. You move closer. The warrior is Odysseus again, though it could be Achilles. Could be Telemachus. Athena visits them all at one point or another. When they hesitate. When they doubt. When they need a shove dressed as a blessing. She doesn't shake them awake. She whispers while they rest. Historians still argue whether these divine dream messages were meant to represent inner resolve or actual interference. Was the voice in their sleep just a dramatized conscience? Or did the Greeks believe dreams were literal scrolls sent from Olympus? Some ancient authors suggested Athena had a special license to bypass the usual dream spirits. She didn't need gates of horn or ivory. She just appeared. The quirky bit? There's one obscure text that describes Athena flicking dreams into sleeping heroes like skipping stones across water. The dreams would ripple outward, touching their thoughts just enough to shift their path by morning. You observe as she speaks again. A vision of home. A reminder of glory. A subtle suggestion that tomorrow, he'll know what to do. And then she's gone. No thunderclap. No flash of divinity. Just a fading warmth in the tent and a small twitch of the warrior's fingers. He stirs. You step outside, where dawn is beginning to burn along the edges of the hills. The birds haven't started yet. The air is that special kind of still, the quiet before anything meaningful happens. And then, like clockwork, the warrior rises. His face has changed. There's clarity there now. Something decided. Something received. He doesn't mention the dream. He just moves. And you realize, not all divine sleep ends in delay. Sometimes, it lights the path forward. Sometimes, sleep is strategy. But sometimes, it's something more intimate. A god whispering, "You're not alone." And the world, once uncertain, seems sharper. Softer. More possible. You trail behind him as he returns to the campfire, grabs his gear, and prepares to lead. He believes it was his own thought. Athena doesn't mind. You're walking now through a darker part of the myths. The skies are overcast, figuratively and literally, and the divine whispers of comfort are gone. In their place, silence. And sleeplessness. Because just as the gods gave the gift of sleep to those they favored, they also knew how to take it away. And when they did, it was always personal. You stop at the edge of a palace where a queen once slept peacefully, but now paces each night, barefoot on cold marble floors. Her eyes are wide, dry, ringed with shadows. Her servants whisper of illness. But you know the truth. A sleepless curse. The gods don't always hurl lightning when they're offended. Sometimes, they simply deny rest. Take away the softness of night. Replace dreams with spinning thoughts. It's subtle, cruel, and deeply effective. Historians still argue whether this idea of divine insomnia was meant to reflect guilt, divine punishment, or political allegory. Some believe these stories mirrored real struggles, kings too burdened by conscience to sleep, warriors trembling with trauma. Others say the gods did it for sport. The quirky bit? One myth describes Hera sending 10 dreams in one night to a mortal woman as punishment, not nightmares, but tedious, meandering visions of cleaning. Each dream, slightly different, always involving brooms. By morning, the woman begged for death or at least a nap. You wander now through a war camp, this time one cursed by Ares. No one has slept in 3 days. The men speak in half sentences. They argue over nothing. One soldier laughs at a rock. Another cries into his soup. The general shouts orders no one remembers 5 minutes later. You've been here before, on both sides of divine drowsiness. And you know, sleeplessness corrodes faster than any sword. There's a temple nearby, built in desperation. The people offer herbs, chants, lambs, even their softest pillows. All they want is rest. But the gods haven't answered. Not yet. Sometimes, they just want you to suffer. Just enough to remember who grants sleep in the first place. You pass a farmer who hasn't blinked in hours. His eyes are red, but dry. He mutters about crows, but there are none. His crops have withered not from drought, but from fatigue. He simply forgot to water them. For 2 weeks. The wind hisses through the trees. You feel the weight of wakefulness in your bones. Sleep, once taken for granted, becomes the most precious commodity. And that, perhaps, is the point. You step over the threshold of an old woman's home. She lies in bed, eyes wide open, staring at the ceiling. She's not cursed. Just, grieving. Her son, lost at sea, was taken by Poseidon in a storm. Now, even the god of sleep cannot reach her. Hypnos, for all his power, does not force sleep onto the truly heartbroken. He only waits. Quietly. Patiently. You sit beside her. Not to comfort, just to witness. The candle flickers. Her breathing slows. Not sleep, just exhaustion. And that's where the gods are different. They can steal sleep. But humans? We lose it all on our own. You find yourself in a twilight land now, neither dream nor waking, a place where the edges of myths blur and bend. The trees are crooked. The moon hangs low. This is where monsters lurk. And strangely, they're not wide awake, prowling the night. They're drowsy. Because even in Greek myths, not every beast was a raging insomniac. Some of them, in fact, took naps. You begin with the Cyclops. Not the terrifying one-eyed ogre you expected, roaring through caverns and hurling boulders. No, this Cyclops is snoring. Loudly. Curled up beside a half-eaten sheep, olive pit stuck to his chin. Odysseus is creeping past him on tiptoe, holding his breath. The crew, behind him, nearly stumbles. But Polyphemus doesn't wake. The escape is ridiculous. Sneaking under a sleeping monster, covered in sheep smell. It's not exactly elegant. But it works. Because sometimes, even monsters need a nap. Historians still argue whether this sleepy escape was written for drama or dark comedy. Some believe Homer intended to show divine favor, that only a god could lull a beast to sleep at the right time. Others suggest it's a metaphor for arrogance. Monsters fall not because of weakness, but because they never expected sleep to be their undoing. The quirky bit? In one obscure version, Polyphemus wasn't lulled by wine alone. Some say a minor god of drowsiness, Phronimos, a cousin of Hypnos, passed through that cave just once, brushing the monster with a finger dipped in fermented figs. You step now into the shadow of another story. Heracles, Hercules, if you're in a Roman mood, is mid-quest, dragging a lion hide, soaked in sweat, and covered in ash. He stumbles to a rock and slumps down, muttering curses. Even demigods need a break. He tries to resist. The task isn't done. But the gods don't care. Sleep ambushes him mid-thought. He wakes hours later, disoriented, the sun lower. A boar nearby has eaten half his supplies. Was it sabotage? Mercy? Just exhaustion catching up? You never know. That's the thing about sleep in these myths, it doesn't always come from a plan. Sometimes it sneaks in when no one's watching. Now you tiptoe around a hydra's den. 7 heads. All asleep. All breathing in tandem. A warrior stands outside, waiting for one to stir so he can test his steel. But the hydra doesn't stir. Not tonight. Even monsters get tired of being feared. In Greek lore, the boundary between hero and beast was often thinner than the veil of sleep. Both could fall asleep at the worst time. Both could miss their moment. Both could be manipulated by a well-placed dream or a yawn from Hypnos. And you realize now, sleep is the great equalizer. The gods give it. The monsters surrender to it. The heroes fear it. And the stories need it. Because even legends must pause. Just long enough for you to breathe between battles. You step out of myth now, not into waking life, but into something sacred. A place not ruled by gods or war or monsters, but by silence. You're inside a temple. The floor is cool beneath your feet. Incense curls upward in lazy spirals. And in the center of this stillness lies a row of stone beds. No one is speaking. Because here, sleep isn't a side effect of exhaustion or a god's prank. Here, sleep is the cure. Welcome to the dream temples of Asclepios. You walk slowly between the sleeping pilgrims, each bundled in linen, their sandals neatly placed at the base of their stone slabs. They've come from across Greece, aching, limping, hearts heavy, spirits frayed. They've offered prayers. Coins. Hair clippings. One even left a carved miniature of their own swollen knee. All for one promise, a healing dream. Historians still argue whether these sleep rituals were more medical than mystical. Some scholars say the temples functioned as early hospitals, where calm and cleanliness did most of the work. Others argue the gods were involved directly, entering dreams to deliver instructions or perform phantom surgeries while the patient snored. The quirky bit? Inscriptions found at these temples recorded the dreams in vivid, theatrical detail. One man dreamed of a snake licking his wounded foot. The next morning, he walked without pain. Another saw the god Asclepios hand him a jar of stars. He drank it in the dream. His fever broke before dawn. You sit near one sleeper now, a young woman, hand curled beneath her cheek. She breathes steadily, her forehead damp with hope. She has left her illness at the temple gates, trusting that in sleep, something sacred will reach her. The priests tend to the silence. They walk barefoot, robes whispering. Occasionally, they place soft bundles of herbs beside each bed, lavender, myrrh, fennel. Not just for scent. For dreams. You pass the incubation chamber, dark, stone-lined, with murals of serpents and sacred dogs. This is where the real dreaming happens. Pilgrims lie down in total darkness, trusting that Asclepios will visit. And sometimes, he does. Not with lightning or glowing eyes. But with a hand placed on a shoulder in the dream. With a whisper like cool rain. You think of all the places sleep has appeared so far, in caves, in battlefields, on enchanted islands. But here, for once, sleep is not interruption or punishment. It is invitation. You settle on a bench near the temple door. Outside, the moon hangs full and low. The trees rustle. The breath of 100 dreamers rises and falls together, like waves. And you feel it, the calm, the weight, the warmth. This is where sleep isn't stolen or given. It's sought. And, when granted, it heals. You rise from the temple slowly, as if the very floor is asking you to stay. But something draws you onward, something deeper, older, quieter than even Hypnos. You walk now into a space that isn't marked by stone or cloud. It feels like a threshold between beats, between thoughts, between breaths. A liminal hallway carved in shadow and starlight. Here, you meet the twin. Not a god of healing. Not of dreams. But of finality. Thanatos. He stands quietly beside you, indistinguishable from the quiet itself. No scythe. No robe. Just stillness draped in shadow. He looks like Hypnos, but sharper around the edges. Where Hypnos breathes comfort, Thanatos exhales inevitability. They are brothers, after all. Born of Nyx, mother of night. One brings sleep. The other, sleep that doesn't end. Historians still argue whether the Greeks truly feared Thanatos. In early myths, he wasn't cruel, just inevitable. More clerk than villain. He arrived gently, like sleep, and simply, didn't leave. Later poets made him sterner. Harsher. But the earliest stories treat him as a necessary sibling, neither jealous nor joyful, simply present. The quirky bit? Thanatos was sometimes tricked. Once, Heracles wrestled him into submission to save a friend. Another time, Sisyphus bound him in chains, and no one died for days. People panicked. Warriors didn't fall. The world grew crowded and restless. Even the gods complained. You wander beside Thanatos now, not afraid, but aware. He doesn't speak. But he doesn't have to. You understand his presence. When the gods can't convince a mortal to rest, he arrives. Not violently. Just, persistently. Beside him, you see Hypnos. Always near. Their tasks overlap. One eases you away from trouble. The other away from time. You remember now a phrase etched on an ancient funerary urn: sleep is the little death, and death is the eternal sleep. But even the Greeks didn't always see it so grimly. For many, death was not punishment. It was reunion. With the gods. With loved ones. With rest that no battlefield could interrupt. You sit at the edge of this space between the brothers. In the myths, the line between sleep and death was never thick. Odysseus often felt it, eyes drooping mid-voyage, unsure whether he'd wake on shore or in the underworld. Achilles dreamed of Patroclus after death. Not a haunting, just a sleep visit. Even Persephone, queen of the underworld, spends part of each year in drowsy light, part in eternal shadow. Half asleep forever. That was the bargain. You watch as Hypnos touches a man's forehead. He sighs and curls into his blanket. Thanatos touches another. She doesn't move again. And the quiet between those gestures is the heartbeat of every Greek tale. You rise slowly. Not in fear. But with reverence. Because to know these twins is to understand that every story ends not with thunder or war, but with rest. And that even gods, in their pride and vanity, all eventually surrender to one of these two. You return now to the mortal world, stepping lightly over olive roots and old stones, where the sun begins to rise over quiet hills. The myths have quieted. The gods have turned away. The wars have ended, or at least, fallen silent for the moment. And yet, sleep remains. Not as a weapon now. Not as punishment or trickery. But as a legacy. A thread through all these tales that binds gods to mortals, warriors to shepherds, kings to beggars. Because in the end, everyone slept. You sit in a grove where the grass bends softly under your weight. A shepherd nearby hums to himself, drifting into a nap beneath a fig tree. He isn't cursed or enchanted. Just tired. Peacefully, beautifully tired. This is what sleep means now. No more meddling. No more divine games. Just rest. Historians still argue whether the Greek obsession with sleep came from their fear of death or their reverence for dreams. Some say they saw sleep as divine training, a nightly rehearsal for the long rest to come. Others claim the Greeks simply loved naps. And honestly, both explanations feel right. The quirky bit? In certain villages, people once built miniature, sleep shrines, in their homes, tiny beds for Hypnos, offered olive oil and lavender to encourage good dreams. It wasn't religion. It was respect. They knew that sleep wasn't weakness. It was a visit from something ancient. You walk now past farmers napping in shade, temple scribes resting on scrolls, children curled beneath grapevines. No one fears sleep here. They embrace it. Because they've heard the stories too. They know what happens when sleep is taken away, or twisted. And they know that when it arrives in its purest form, it restores more than muscle. It restores meaning. You return to Hypnos's cave, just for a moment. He's there, of course. He always is. Watching over dreams. Tending to them. Planting them like seeds in the minds of the world. You bow. Not out of fear. But gratitude. And as you turn away, you feel it begin again. That heaviness behind your eyes. That softness along your spine. Sleep. Not stolen. Not tricked. Just offered. You lie down, not in battle, not in myth, but in your own quiet moment. And for the first time in a very long story, you rest.